Good afternoon. My name is Abel Roger Jera, and I will be doing a presentation on software piracy and the ethics behind it. So this presentation will cover mainly what exactly is software piracy, the concept behind it, and how it has evolved along the years. It will also cover the possible initiatives and responses that already have been thought of to combat to counterattack this problem, as well as an analysis, an ethical standpoint, using an ethical theory of the problem itself. So, what exactly is software piracy? For this, I chose a video that explains it very concisely and very briefly since it's a concept that is much more common than the individual will think.
Hi, my name is Dave Andrews. Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about piracy. Now, piracy has been in the minds of a lot of people since about the turn of the new millennium, especially when it comes to music and software. With computers and CDs, it's very easy to make duplicates of software, duplicates of albums, and take that software or music and put it on another computer and use it on one or two or three or more different computers. What you need to realize when you purchase a piece of software is that yes, you do have the CD and you can put that on multiple computers technically. With that CD comes a license that is an agreement between you and the person that you purchased it from that you're only going to use this on one computer. Now, if you take that or make a copy of it and give it to a friend or put it on more than one computer, you're actually breaking the terms of that license and you're opening yourself up to actually be sued by the person that you purchased it from. It's something that you just have to watch out for. And what's important is that it does not include whether or not you sold it to somebody else. That really makes no difference. The fact that you made a duplicate of it and gave it to somebody, you have just pirated that, even if they didn't sell it to you or you had no gain from that. So it's just something that you have to watch out for, and just keep in mind when you buy something, you're buying it for your use, it's for you. If you want to recommend it to somebody, they should really go out and buy it themselves. My name is Dave Andrews, and I've just talked to you a little bit about piracy.
Thank you. So very similar to um, the equivalent in writing in the professional world, which is the intellectual property and all the copyright acts. We have the same in the virtual world, and as a consequence, many hackers have been able to adapt or go around the laws themselves. So new types of software piracy have been created. For example, we have soft lifting, which is basically lending someone that piece of code or that software without them actually buying it. So they will be using that software without a license. And it's very common, especially in schools, universities, and small businesses. We also have hard disk loading, which is when third parties, companies or sellers have machinery or have devices that in which they install the software. So they download the software, they install it in the device, and then they sell the device, be it computers, for example, or laptops, tablets, even phones are victims to this. And the user, of course, uses such software without knowing it's legal. Then we have renting, which is basically a service. Someone has the software and they rent to someone else so they could use it without actually buying the software, which is just a temporary thing, but still it's worse in a certain way because the person renting the software is the one gaining the money and not the actual publisher, which deserves it. It's ethically incorrect. And then the most common one is just online piracy as a whole, which includes the distribution, like downloads and uploads of software in mass communications sites like websites, forums, emails, even social media sometimes. So why is this a problem? Why it has become it's a problem because it has become such a large scale thing. It has been globalized since technology has developed and many countries have gained access to the internet, right? And parts of countries that did not have internet before do have internet now, and the distribution of such pirated software gets grows exponentially. For example, countries that did not have access to the internet before suddenly have access, but they don't know how to deal with it. So hackers use this opportunity to take advantage and distribute software and pirate software themselves using proxies and VPNs and other technological things, right? So most cases are often perhaps not ignored, but more of unknown or unseen because the internet is such a wide place that the people can possibly cover everything, right? For example, in universities, it's very common to have a bunch of computers using the same software without buying, of course, every single copy of the software. For example, Liao in the works cited included sorry carried out an experiment in with a number of educational institutions in which he surveyed to see whether they used pirated software or not. And indeed, unfortunately, the majority, as we can see in the graph, the majority of universities do use pirated software, some without knowing it and some knowingly, but regardless, it's still a lot. And while this experiment may not be a global experiment per se, it does gives us an idea of how rapid and how uncontrollable is the growth of software piracy in general. Excuse me. Then in this slide, we actually have the global perspective of the problem. We can see how countries with little development like Algeria or Ukraine or Nicaragua have a higher index of software piracy because that's a map of the software piracy index, right? And we can see a clear relationship between development of the country and software piracy level. The higher the development in the country, the lower the software piracy index should be. We have a few exceptions like China and Russia, but for the most part, like United States, Canada, Australia, and the UK, which are really developed countries, they do have uh, anti-piracy systems are well supported, right? Um, so the responses. So what have been the responses so far? We as United States were one of the first ones to actually attempt to combat this problem with the Copyright Act. And India, who's one of the largest exporters of software in the world, also took the initiative and passed the Indian Copyright Act, which consists of viewing the perpetrator, the one who incurs in software piracy, as a criminal under both criminal and civil law. Also, it's worth mentioning that officers in India are allowed to arrest someone who they suspect to be in doing self piracy activities without the need of a warrant. So that's a plus. Other countries include Canada and Sweden, but for the most part, most countries have been implementing rigorous regulations and requirements for companies for the use of software. So, like Microsoft, which is victim to a lot of software piracy. But yeah, next we have looking into more specific examples. We have the initiatives of countries in a big scale and like nationwide. For example, Italy, which implemented something called audits, which are gradual clientele checks. It consists of when they are able to identify a problem, they are given the right to infiltrate the individual or the client's network in which the problem is, and from there they can analyze, they can investigate, and more importantly, they can tackle down the issue. And this is known as spy software, which is used by hackers, but if used within the legal boundaries, it can prove to be very helpful. Another example is Brazil, which it's worth mentioning because in Latin America there's very poor management of cybersecurity and software piracy in general. So for them to actually be remarkable in the global scale is something really significant. So they carried on federal virtual operations, which means an online operation that covers the whole nation, right? One of them is it's renowned, it's recognized along the world by Operation 404, which was able to tackle down to eliminate, sorry, to eliminate 65 applications and more than 250 websites of illegal activities, which is software piracy, right? But yeah, these are two examples of very specific initiatives that have been going on. For the analysis, since we're dealing with such a big problem in a global scale, I think we ought to use utilitarianism, which covers problems of the big picture rather than the individual, and also looks at the immediate responses rather than a possible outcome of a possible solution, right? So before getting into the analysis, I must say that the pro-piracy arguments which people come up with are really flawed and do not really count because it's not ethically supported. For example, one of the strongest one they have is that uh, they are in the right to use a software or a piece of code that is not finished and it's buggy or glitched, but that has no moral backbone, because that's basically like saying a car that has been broken down, we have the right to steal it because it's just broken down, because the fact that it's broken down. But in reality, that car still has economic, personal, and mechanical value, which translates into the piece of code in the virtual world the same. It has the intellect, it's an intellectual property of someone, so you're incurring in theft if you do so. So also, my bad. Sorry. Also, it the software piracy itself causes a lot of a lot of um, consequences in a lot of nations, from the society to economic to governmental issues. For example, um, the problem is that once a publisher releases a work, a software, a few people legally buy it, and those who legally buy it, may be or not, they distribute illegal copies of it. But the ones who pirate the software initially, they distribute the software. So a significant amount of money is lost because people, only a minimal amount of people, a minimal portion of people actually legally buy the product. So this goes into a snowball effect, and it grows exponentially. The amount of pirated software gets distributed. So more people start using the pirated software knowingly or not. And as a measurement, the original publishers publish another version with higher prices because they need to get money. They need to get that lost money. But then this code releases a chain of events, right? That culminates in a cycle that less people buy it, and then more people begin to use the pirated version, and so on, and then the cycle occurs again. So as we can see, it's not it causes a lot of trouble, not only for the publisher itself but for the global economy, because um, countries have to deal with this sort of problem, and they have to back up the companies economically, and that takes budget and that takes resources that could be used into something else. Conclusion: the software piracy in general has no ethical supports. It does have, but they are very flawed. So morally looking at it and economically looking at it, no matter how you look at it, societal, it is still wrong and it should not be done. That's why for so many years the planet has been trying to eradicate this problem. But with the birth of new technologies and new hackers, it's almost impossible in such a big scale. But yeah, here we have my references pages. Um, it's all cited. and that's about it. So thank you very much and have a nice day.